there are two big projects that kind of led up to me envisioning this color organ or light synth. One of which was Anna's piece In the Light of Air with the light bulb installation. Levy had created a max patch where he took the audio signals and we converted them into DMX to control the lights. And that was one of the first instances where I realized that there was a way to kind of get audio directly and related to lighting. And then there was another, starting with the Ice Lab series and then Open Ice at Abrams Arts Center, where I really got to kind of play with the musicians in real time to kind of adjust colors while they were playing. Specifically, as I'll speak about later, with Ryan Muncie's performance of James Tenney's Saxony, to really just sort of feel the music and create color as it went along. That really, those two moments sort of sparked this idea in my head about finding a way to have a direct correlation between the music and colored light. And then working with Suzanne Farron and Doug Fitch on Dolce La Morte at the Met Museum. We had an all LED rig there, which meant color was endless. I could do whatever. And Doug really let me sort of experiment and play around with color while we're doing. And so those events have really helped and kind of opened me up to this world of, as some of my research calls it, visual music, or relationships specifically between color and pitch. And so my work with the ensemble has really led up to this moment. And of course, conversations that we've had colloquially between you and me, that also has kind of helped push this project forward. So I thank you for that much.
Oh, of course, it's my pleasure. And it's super exciting that we get to experience maybe the first steps of creating such a device or such a piece of software or whatever anyone would call it. I know that you've involved a few collaborators, some with whom the ensemble has worked before and some with whom we haven't had any previous work relationship before. Could you tell me a little bit about the people that will be presenting some work in process showings during the following segments? Yeah.
Yes. So first, after a little history about light organs, we're going to show some clips from a conversation I had last month with Viola Yip, where she was fortunate enough to be in New York at the time. And we were able to sit down and I showed her the patch that I was working on. And we had a great conversation about how she thought musicians might want to control and what kind of parameters, really opening up. And that kind of led then to these two performances you'll see later with Mediaqueer and Elizabeth A. Baker, where they actually played with the patch and sort of took it on as their own, which was really incredible. And the conversation I had with Viola was really instrumental in figuring out how to incorporate then Mediaqueer and Elizabeth A. Baker.
That's great. I think without further ado, I thank you for joining me for this introduction segment, Nick. And I'm really looking forward to learning more about the history of the color organ, the description of what you have created. And I'm especially excited to see what Viola, Darian, Thomas, and Fong Tran from Mediaqueer and Elizabeth A. Baker have created with the patch. Thank you all again for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy. Take care.
Thank you.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the history of the light organ. This is not a new idea, but many have claimed their version to be completely original. As Michael Betancourt states in an article he wrote for The Atlantic, every one of these inventors believed their instrument was entirely unprecedented. And now we'll actually dive a little bit into the history of the light organ, or color organ, as some have called their contraptions. This is not comprehensive by any means, but here are some highlights. In 1704, Sir Isaac Newton publishes Optics, where in between a theorem on the mixture of pigment colors and a theorem on the mixture of light colors, he assigns colors to the transitions between musical notes. He uses a diagram of a color wheel to discuss the proper mixing of colors towards white, which would be the center of the circle there. And what's interesting is he randomly assigns musical notes to the intervals between these colors. And through this random connection he makes between color and music, while it's not the first in history, it becomes a point of reference for many discussing the relationship between color and music. A side note, Fred Colopy on his site rhythmiclight.com has put together a fascinating chart of various color hue to musical pitch relationships that you should check out if you're curious about different pitch to hue mappings that other people have put together in the past. So going back to Newton, not much really comes out of this random theorem until 1740, when French Jesuit Louis Bertrand Castel publishes Optique des couleurs to counter-argue Newton's discovery of the visible spectrum of light. Despite his contradictory view to Newton's theory of the visible spectrum, Castel is certainly influenced by Newton's assigning of colors to musical pitches, and he builds what he calls an ocular harpsichord, which is a keyboard below a grid of 60 stained glass windows, each with a candle in front and a curtain behind, each with a candle behind and a curtain in front. When a key is struck, the shade in front of the window is pulled up mechanically to reveal the illuminated colored glass. It sounds a little clunky and must have been pretty smoky with all those candles, but that's our first documented example of a light organ. The next noteworthy footnote of the light organ occurs in 1877 with American inventor Bainbridge Bishop, who patents his color organ. He builds 3 of these, and in 1893 describes one that plays color and music. The color is revealed behind a large piece of frosted glass above the keyboard. Exposed, a shutter opens and reveals an illuminated pane of glass, similar to Castel's light organ. His big improvement, though, was the use of frosted glass to diffuse the light from the colored glass to create softer color shapes. He built 3 of these, and all of them succumbed to fires. Most notably, there was one in P.T. Barnum's house that caught fire and was destroyed. So we don't have any of these examples to date. And then in 1893, British painter and inventor Alexander Wallace Remington creates his clavier à lumière, influenced by Dr. Heinrich Schelling, who writes in 1872, "The gradation of color from red through yellow, green, and blue to violet is to the eye what the gamut is to the ear, and it is therefore not without reason that we speak of the tone and harmony of color." And so influenced by that, Remington, using arc lamps and prisms, in addition to large rotating glass discs, he creates the most technologically advanced version of the light organ that would then set the stage for later development. His keyboard of light is also backed by his precise mapping of color hue to musical pitch. You see, he even noted the frequencies of each color. Those are those numbers in each color swatch above the keys there. Jumping to the 20th century, we have Scriabin, who writes his color music piece Prometheus in 1911 to be performed with an instrument called the cremola, which is another light organ that was created by Preston Millar. The cremola is a keyboard with 15 keys and 12 different colored lights. In 1915, Prometheus premieres at Carnegie Hall to lackluster response. Apparently it was not bright enough to fill the hall, so most, he assumes, did not experience it properly. And now we get to our 2 most documented and recognized color organist inventors. First, we have, in 1919, Thomas Wilfrid, who builds his Clavilux Model A, the first of many models, small and large, that he would sell for home use, like a television set, and also to museums and galleries for large installations. These, not dissimilar to Remington's designs, employed colored discs and reflectors to bounce light from a source onto a screen. He would call each of these silent compositions a visible opus. because of the multiple standalone units he built and their inclusion in large museum collections such as MoMA and the Smithsonian, he would spark a light art movement that continues on to this day, in fact. Search Thomas Wilfred on YouTube and you will find multiple videos of his light opuses. Finally, my favorite musician inventor extraordinaire, Mary Hollick Greenwald, a Syrian immigrant who studied piano in Vienna and working around the same time as Thomas Wilfred. She builds and patents extremely complicated electrical and mechanical keyboards that filter and color light in numerous combinations decided by the player. And in fact, her patents are so specific that at one point she cites Thomas Wilfred for patent infringement from his own Clavilux models. Mary Hollick Greenwald does not rely on specific cue to pitch color relationships. Rather, she allows them to unfold naturally by the performer. And in fact, she performed many of these instruments on her own, using her training as a classical pianist. In 1927, she actually patents one of her light color instruments, and involved in this invention is her own, in her own words, fluid connector that regulates voltage. She would patent it separately as the rheostat, which I'm sure you've heard about. I mean, any knob on a soundboard or a synthesizer, we have thanks to her, which is pretty rad. And in her patent for the light color instrument, she describes its use to control the mixing of actual color, color shade, and color tint in the form of light rays. This was just one of her inventions. We could spend an entire stream just talking about her work, but if you'd like to explore more, the Historical Society of Pennsylvania has all of her papers, and there's an excellent Flickr account set up by Amy Alexander where she has uploaded photos of these papers. And there also includes images of her playing her various light organs. It's really fascinating. Anyways, so Thomas Wilfred and Mary Hollick Greenwald, these two are really the start of a very large field of light art and visual music that continues to this day. And there are many websites dedicated to this practice, which I urge you to explore, but beware because it can be a really slippery rabbit hole. And now I'd like to tell you about how this whole project came to be. When I was working with Ryan Muncie on his performance of James Tinney's Saxony in the Experimental Theater at Abrons Art Center, I was changing the light in real time, reacting directly to the music. And I thought, is there a way to automate these lighting changes or create a system where any musician can play a room in the same way that they can play an instrument? And looking at the space, the Experimental Theater at Abrons Art Center in New York, it's a cinder block rectangular cube, almost square in elevation, but long. I thought it would be perfect space to set up a grid of lighting overhead and on the sides, mask the lighting instruments so you would not see them, and fill the space with smoke. So when you turned on a light, it would illuminate the air, but you would not see where the light was coming from. Each light, specifically colored, would represent a key on a keyboard or a note. When you played a chord, multiple lights would turn on from different locations and illuminate the air, creating this playable James Turrell-like space. I knew theoretically it was possible to create some sort of software program to interface between the performer and the lights. But with my career as a lighting designer taking up all my time, I really didn't have the impetus to get started until now. International Contemporary Ensemble started the Tuesdays at 7 series, and with the push from director of production Maciej Lewandowski, this seemed like the perfect time to get started on a beta version of the software. So in August, I sat down and I started learning Max, and with some guidance from YouTube, Maciej and Levi Lorenzo, I created a very, very rough version of software to control light via pitch. Each of the 12 steps in an octave is mapped to a specific red, green, and blue color mix I've created based on the historic hue to pitch color relationship first suggested by Newton in 1704. The goal of the initial phase was to create the structural bones of playability with further functionality and expansion to be added after proof of concept was tested. And so, with the collaboration of Viola Yip, Darian Thomas, and Phong Tran as mediaqueer, and Elizabeth A. Baker, here are some of their explorations with this early version of the color synth.
So I think if you want to just do this software part, you might need to come up with all the parameters that you want to control. And I don't know, the way I do it usually is making a lot of subpatch and then having on and off button. Kind of, it's like a software version of like a modular synthesizer or something. Like I like to use that as a reference because it has a lot to offer. And that's why when people come into the instrument, they can feel like they can put in their artistic voice.
Right. As you said, having more dynamic control over it.
And then they can patch whatever they want. Like they can patch this to this time, or the other person don't like this, they go this from there. So there are a lot of options. But I think for now, at least if I were a musician, I would want to come in and be able to calibrate it in the way that makes the light having a lot of different variety of lights. So I might work on that first, and I will also find ways to not just map it with the frequency. I will find a ways to control the release time, because right now the release time is basically the same.
Like your ideas of other dynamic controls
Totally.
are really great, but like even something as simple as sustain, when you activate that, creating more delay. Or you create different presets that do different things, or basically just on-off button for different functions. So that it's modular. I think modular could be quite a nice way to work on it, especially for things that for projects like this, there are so many unknowns until you know what kind of equipment that you will get. Because I mean, it sounds like you just want to focus on the light, you focus on the color, and eventually you want the smoke to amplify the color. And so to give it a sense of location in the air. Because if you just shoot a light across, you don't see it.
Right.
But if you put smoke there, it then becomes a thing in space.
So you add more presence. The light presence.
And so then when you start dealing with lights in different directions, all shooting into the same space, how they mix in the air is another variable in there. Which I'm excited to explore one day.
That'd be cool. Okay.
Because if your low note is always the same color and in the same location, but when coupled with a different note or a different variety of notes or even a chord, like what does that chord look like in the air? There it is.
But this is not.
It was just now. See, it's very faint.
I see.
So something's happened with the gain.
I see.
I don't know what it is. Boom.
You could also think of how the how the colors are released. Sorry, I'm using a musical term. Sometimes randomization is a good object. I mean, sometimes in some situations, randomization, whatever that is, you have to try it. It could generate pretty good result. And I'm wondering, there's something like, just an idea, it just came to my mind, that like if there's like a patch to control spatialization, can you spatialize?
No, I think that's a great idea.
And that's why I think could be quite fun to have the audience inside the smoke.
No, it would just be each person has a different relationship to the lights.
But that's what spatialization do.
But even if you just had lights above mapped a specific way with color, like that would still be really interesting. And with smoke, like moving around in the space, you'd see, looking through there, you'd see different colors blending. Depending on where you were.
That could be quite cool, especially if it's so black.
But no, I think those are some really great points to move forward for me.
But also I know this is a very prototypey thing, but especially this is a prototype stage. It's also worth it to just get, you don't even need to get someone, you might just go to YouTube and say violin C
Yeah.
and download the audio and put it in there
Yeah.
and see how they react. Yeah, I mean, another way that I suddenly think of is like you can decide a trajectory of colors, like maybe the beginning more yellow orangey, like kind of fixing, like giving a trajectory of the colors of your show, kind of making it a big form, and you use the instrument to kind of articulate the subtleties. That could be nice too if you want something structural.
Yeah.
You could also find a way to map a module. Since you have two, you can say, you can have an option of as a patch saying how many lights do you have, like one. Then if you have one light, you press this button and then it only triggers one part of the patch.
Yeah.
Stuff like that could be really handy on the performance level.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a lag. But yeah, definitely, it definitely picks up better on high register stuff. I'm trying to like there's gonna be overlay on each note, so I'm just trying to cut the release as hard as I can.
Yeah.
Oh, that's actually not bad. It's probably the release, the over,
thing,
yeah. I think another way to map colors, if we're kind of keeping in like the octave to octave ratio thing, is that it C is red and then F sharp violet and then back around.
So like circle of 50?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that way if you like go up, it doesn't like hard cut like violet right into red.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so like the lower buzzier notes, it takes like it takes like 5 or 6 tries, like this note. Yeah, it's like response is like immediate on a sign 10. You just have a loop going.
Yeah, it's cool how it catches the rhythm of the things.
Love like what? Is it just pitch?
It's a chord.
Oh yeah, that's what I was playing with at the beginning too. I was just like,
exactly.
oh okay, it's just
like, oh, you're responding to stuff, which is interesting.
Right.
That's not really there. It's like the psychoacoustic shit.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it's like you can tell like it's just like trying to recalculate like what the dominant pitch is in this chord right now, and it's just like recalculating on this tempo.
Right.
Did you guys feel a connection at all with the lights and what you were playing?
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, I was definitely like
reaction.
Right, like the opening thing, I was just like, oh, okay, the lights are kind of reacting as a third rhythm on top of just this chord I'm holding, so that's gonna change when I change chords.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
Like there was definitely like incidental rhythms that we weren't actually playing that the light was doing because you're just
responding to the
it.
effects and stuff, yeah.
Yeah, and then it was like, okay, cool, this is a thing we can work around with.
Do you wish it was more responsive? I mean, I know that was just like a snippet.
Right.
I think I wish that we had control over how responsive it was.
Right.
I think it could be a spectrum.
Oh,
Yeah. Like, I kind of would want more control over the colors.
Yeah.
Like, like being able to be like, cool, this is the range of colors I want things to be, at least for like this section, and then we can like kind of make like a set list or whatever and be like, cool, here's
the palette.
Right.
Yeah. And then for me, I think it's what were we talking about? The ASDR thing, where it's like, it'd be nice if we could turn a switch or turn a knob and that just stays on the whole time, instead of like
Yeah.
that is just that color until I
That's
change it.
That's phase 2 for me.
Right,
So I
yeah.
want, talking to other people as well, is
Yeah.
having some sort of variable control over
Mhm.
how the light's reacting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and now
Remapping all that.
I'm starting to see like the basic bones, the structure of the software is kind of doing what is intended. I think now I can start adding these other layers to it. Now that I know that we have like a robust framework to start with.
Yeah.
Figure out how to do all this switching stuff. That's really cool.
I have a big thing of like finding species counterpoint in visuals. So it's like
do.
like the
Yes, you
one-to-one
really do.
like light to pitch relationship was like, cool, that's for species. Let's get to like florid counterpoint.
Florid, exactly.
I think going into it, like, we knew that like the initial patch was gonna kind of just be like we were told that it was just one-to-one mapping of like pitch to color, and that it essentially be monophonic. And then basically as we were rehearsing, we kind of just went into it like, okay, so we're just gonna try to break this, right? We're just gonna ignore those things and then just let the software do whatever it's gonna do to like us not following those parameters at all. And then I think the result came out pretty fun. Yeah, so, and it's one of those things that we kind of like, the visual interaction of what's on stage or on screen versus what is being sonically output is something that we're always kind of considering. So in my head, personally, it's like a one-to-one relationship of pitch to color is like, that's like the first species counterpoint. And I want to like dive into like the florid counterpoint with like how visuals and sound interact.
Right. And then from doing that, we were able to like interact with the limitations of machine, right? Which kind of just felt like interacting with another person, because collaborating with other people is not only collaborating with their abilities, but also with their limitations, right? And how they've come up with creative solutions to solve that. So it was kind of like discovering, oh, what is this new friend going to do when we throw this at them? Because we know they're trained to do this one thing, but what if they're in a context that they're not used to? And so in this way, it felt very humanizing almost, which I guess has been a lot of the experience of this past year, right? Collaborating over digital media and like being a digital collaborator, you start to genuinely collaborate with your machines, computers, and programs. And I don't know, I think we found some beautiful things. I think what we found was that when we did maybe what wasn't really expected of us, that more interesting results came out, and that we were able to learn more about like, oh, if this could do this other thing, then we'd be able to like weaponize that too in a performance for like a really drastic, beautiful effect.
Elizabeth, what did you do? It was so cool. I was watching it and I was like, I don't know how she's controlling this.
So I wanted to be like really transparent with what the sound was doing and what the lights were doing in relation to the sound. So everything you're hearing and seeing is controlled by those two wireless MIDI rings. So the Source Audio Hot Hands and the Wave by Genkai Instruments, which they're both gesture-based MIDI controllers, wireless MIDI controllers, but the Wave has specific codified gestures that mean certain things to it that you can map in your own like little thing. And then Source Audio has their own proprietary software. So the Source Audio Hot Hand was really good for creating longer textures. And the Wave was actually what I was using to just shut the video, like shut all the lights down and morph the sound. So yeah, it was, what I will say is, so as a person who has used these controllers for a long period of time, I can say that every performance, the first like little bit is adjusting to this disconnect in your brain that of like what you expect to happen sonically and what happens movement wise. But with the lights, that disconnection didn't happen as long. It was like, oh, okay, this does this. And so it was really easy to build off of that. And part of the performance, I actually recorded in silence for myself and then just let the resultant audio happen.
Because the way that the software is set up is it took a MIDI pitch and then converted that to color. So I'm curious how the rings converted your gestures into that item, or if you just destroyed the patch and created something wholly new, which I am totally interested in it as well.
I cheated because I believe in maximum utilization of available resources, like Beep, and was like, oh, I need to bring actual modules in to help with the MIDI signal. And then I think I just went off of velocity, because note on, note off, when you have this like Bluetooth accelerometer awesomeness is just boring. So.
Yeah, I can't imagine it would have been good if you actually did what I wanted.
You know, sometimes we just have to break your stuff to make it useful for the time that we need it right then and there.
I'm down for that. And that goes back to our conversation, Viola, where you were talking about it depends on the musician or the collaborator. And it seems like in both cases, they basically took what I made and ran with it and destroyed it, which is great.
But what the interesting thing about it's just really fascinating to hear all kinds of like all different. We all have different approach to the same patch, but it also reminds me the interesting thing about mapping is it's like you can actually map in the way you want. It doesn't have to be in a same direction. Like it doesn't. You don't have in the acoustic world. If you want to play the violin louder, you need to pull your bow faster and then press a lot more pressure in it. But in the digital world, you can reverse this relationship, or you can delay. You can filter it. You can choose the numbers. They're all numbers, and you can pick and choose. Prime number goes to here. The rest goes to here, and stuff like that. And so it is a very interesting topic.
Yeah, and Darian, I believe that you and Fong played with that a lot, because I didn't hear a whole lot of your actual dry signal.
Right. Yeah.
Or the
no, I try and never have a lot of my dry signal in the recording, because you know it's like, well, I play violin. Genuinely, we all know what violin sounds like. There's no need to like, you know, it's like I have a whole pedal board here though, and I know that y'all don't know what all these things sound like. So I'd rather do that. That's much more interesting to me. And then, especially with the idea of it being theoretically a monophonic instrument, I guess it's like to get really geeky dweeby about it, right? Like we're at that stage where Bach was when he wrote the 6 partitures, right? And he's like, hey, violin's not a monophonic instrument. And it's like, I guess you're right. Yeah, that's true. And that's what we were trying to figure out with the light synth. It's like, what exactly does monophonic mean? How many times can I do chords? Monophonic in this instance meant if I play a chord, then the synth is just going to find the primary pitch, which is really interesting and more nuanced and complicated than the idea of monophonic, right? So I guess just being at the entry stages of this was really fun because it's like, oh, we get to find the paths that other people could go down if they wanted to. And it's like, there's something over there. I don't have time to get into it right now, but you can totally dig over there if you want, type vibe. And it feels like the way that people have been using gear for a while. I mean, like all the instruments have been around for a healthy amount of time. We know what they do. People are still discovering new things on them, even just acoustically. And then you start adding in machines and it's like, oh, I can do whatever I want. And there's no reason not to, which is the most fun.
Personally, I really like them as opposed to playing physical instruments a lot of times, because I feel like there's too many times where musicians are confined to like this one space because that's all you can do with your instrument. And working with these wireless MIDI controllers has allowed me to really explore space and also explore tiny gestures and what tiny gestures can mean in a big sonic sense and now in a big light sense.
Is this something that you would keep going and keep building from these starting blocks that we created and create something on your own in the future based off of this?
Yes. I'll take that right. Yes, as a person who is a filmmaker and a mover and a sound person, this is like right up my alley. It's like something that I have imagined after watching like many ambient bras and what they do with visuals in their shows. And now just bringing visuals here. And as we can know, anyone that knows me is I'm very extra. So this is right up my alley. And I have many plans for safer times when I can go out into the wilderness with the gators and the other woodland creatures and do some cool stuff.
Would the gators enjoy this?
The gators don't care. They're cute. They're just chilling. They're like Snorlax. They're just like a very angry Snorlax. That's all the gators are. They're chilling. They're logs. And cuddly.
Excellent.
That's so endearing. But also, yes, same. With like all the emphasis on video art and stuff for my practice, and having honestly wanted to be a lighting designer for a really long time. This is.
We should talk more about
beautiful.
that.
It can be used. Huh? Sure.
We should
Well,
talk
I mean,
more
like,
about that. Maybe there's a collaboration in the future.
Oh yeah, no, there are. There's so many that it's like it almost doesn't have to be said because it will happen. But I don't know. I love how important lighting is, and like how austere it can be, and how moody it can be. I think a lot of it goes to just doing a lot of musical theater and after a while just not paying attention to the music as much, but paying a lot of attention to the tech crew and being like, how did y'all make like a stained glass chapel in here? Like, what did you do? And there are so many cool lighting techniques that then informed when I got into photography, and like it makes a lot of sense. And with the current practice of the concert being an installation art piece ever since for a long time, but especially with recent works from pop stars like, I don't know, Kanye, Beyonce, everyone just being like, it's an installation, you're in this universe now. This is such a great tool, and I'd love to use it and abuse it and create new experiences for people. Or just make whatever I want,
Yeah, there's definitely a lot to explore there, and it's really exciting to like dive deep and figure out like how much interaction you can actually get out of working with the lights and music. And then I think going back to like how we were thinking of the lights as kind of a third performer, seeing what other people are doing with like Holly Herndon has been doing stuff with AI and music and using like an AI chorus as an extra body of performer, and like, I don't know, having an AI light performer doing all this, like reading and like interacting and responding to music and then generating light patterns. That'd be a fun experiment to play with.
Totally. Max MSP's digital platforms like that, it provides a lot of flexibility, which is, to me, it's a brain shaker. For me, it shakes my brain because that's almost the opposite from what I do. I'm really interested in the analog side of things, and I'm really interested in seeing how the complex world can be filtered in some ways through our analog gestures and relationships. And working with your patch really shake my brain and see, actually, I can reverse the relationship. Actually, I can connect this to that. And that's totally, well, on one hand, it's a very good exercise for me to like having some elastic muscles in my brain, but at the same time, it really makes me think. Just for me, engaging objects, I really have a different perspective on that after working with your patch. And of course, your patches totally provide new areas for me, because for the last few years, I've been working just with light bulbs, just like one color, and trying to find something interesting within one color, one texture. But what if we add more things? How, like, what are the things that are in play when we compose? And I'm pretty sure we all agree in this group. We all agree sound and music and light can be perceived quite fluidly as music, and how that we can make use of these two seemingly different and seemingly but also very similar way of using that as music, which is really fascinating, always very rich, and never make me want to leave that area of artistic production.
I have two things to add.
Okay, go for it.
One is that in the future, you know, when we can travel and do things, I enjoy how portable this setup is. Like, you don't necessarily even have to bring your own lights. You just have to like have that interface and then the patch, and you're good to go. So plain ability, check. Awesome. Second thing, really an open opportunity to just mess with synesthetics. Like, especially those people that have perfect pitch synesthesia. This is like what I've always want. Like, it's gonna destroy minds, because all you have to do is just switch one of those pitches and one of those colors, and then all of a sudden they're having a new, totally sober but very trippy experience, and I'm all about it.
Bye.